manufacturing, education, healthcare, and more. Opportunities can be found at kentcounty.com/jobs.
State Circle is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you.
Connecting Marylanders to their government. This is State Circle.
Good evening. Welcome to State Circle. Coming up tonight, our annual legislative preview. We will hear from the leaders of the General Assembly about the issues that matter to Marylanders. But first tonight, the nation and its seat of government were shaken this week by an attack on the U.S. Capitol. A mob assembled by the president and fueled by his stories of stolen votes stormed the Capitol, interrupting the election certification. 5 lives were lost, including one rioter shot by police and an officer who died later of injuries suffered while defending the Congress. When order was restored, Maryland's Steny Hoyer, the majority leader, addressed the House.
We, the people, on this day in Congress must be agents of unity and constructive action to face the grave threats that confront us and tell those who would assault our Capitol that is not the American way.
Maryland's lone Republican in Congress, Andy Harris, voted to support the president's challenge. He responded to demands from state Democrats that he resign with a statement saying that he held legitimate constitutional concerns about how the November election was conducted. We did not call for the overthrowing of an election, he said. Maryland representatives and their staff members were among those rushed to safety and locked down during the attack.
Under every other seat was a gas mask set of 2 gas masks, and they asked us to open the gas masks up, get them prepared to be put on as needed, and then to wait for further instructions. It didn't take much long, probably 5 minutes more, before there was pounding on the doors in the hall by the mob outside trying to get into the hall. At that point, they instructed us to put the gas mask on and get low in case there were gunshots. And they began an evacuation, of the hall out a side door. I think the biggest emotion I had was just anger and disappointment that, how did it come to this? I mean, we're here doing a ministerial task and now we're wearing gas masks and, fleeing from a room, literally under attack, and in the nation, in the people's house. And we should be working on problems to help people.
It was a horrific day for the United States. I was in the Senate chamber when they quickly removed the vice president and shortly thereafter shut down the Senate floor. They told us all to get away from doors, to protect ourselves. Shortly thereafter, we were informed that there were intruders in the building and that we expected they were armed and that we needed to move to safety as quickly as possible. So they escorted us in a group out of the Senate chamber to a safe location. We moved with great dispatch. To say the least, there was high anxiety and concern about our safety. But quite frankly, we're also concerned about the safety of our democracy. We found it very difficult to believe that the Senate chamber, the House chamber was being invaded, that we had insurrection in this country, and that they were successful in taking over the Capitol. So it was a very frightful moment, and the images that we saw afterwards just reinforced our anxiety at the time and the damage that was done to our country.
There was a lot of information available to know that there was a real threat coming to Washington, D.C. President Trump was calling for his supporters to come, and not to come peacefully, but to come and to be rough if necessary, to be forceful as necessary. There's a lot of chatter on social media that suggested that this was not going to be your normal protest. You saw some video footage where Capitol police officers were resisting and pushing back those rioters who were trying to assault the Capitol grounds, whereas others were not providing that resistance. And that's not a reflection. It shouldn't be a reflection, I believe, on the men and women in uniform. But that's a failure of leadership.
When the nation's capital is overrun, I mean, each and every one of us as an American, as a citizen, to see your nation's capital being raided and penetrated, that's wrong. And that hurt inside. And anybody involved needs to be held accountable, starting with this president. People see the dome all over the world. It's a model of freedom and liberty and who we are in the United States. And in my opinion, because I specialize in national security, I represent NSA, and I'm that, you know, we most powerful country in the world, and we can't even protect our capital. That really upset me.
Governor Hogan commended Maryland troopers and Guard members who helped to end the insurrection. Hogan was asked if Vice President Pence should take power until the Biden inaugural.
I think there's no question that America would be better off if the president would resign or be removed from office, and if Mike Pence, Vice President of the United States, would conduct a peaceful transition of power over the next 13 days until President Biden is sworn in.
Monday on Direct Connection, answers to your questions about the 25th Amendment. You can email questions in advance to livequestions@mpt.org. Now to the 442nd session of the Maryland General Assembly, which begins next week. The pandemic precautions will be obvious with plastic dividers in place and plans for virtual committee meetings. Speaker of the House Adrian Jones explained how this will work.
For the first day, we'll be meeting as one body, but in two locations. You know, some will be in the main chamber, spread out social distance, and the other will be in the chamber annex in the House office building, again, with the proper, precautions. The members who are immune compromised, they will be in the gallery that's overhead that looks towards the rostrum, and members of the press will be over top of where I preside at the rostrum. So there will be, again, it will be social distancing precaution. We have to come in the first day because there's some procedural changes that we have to vote on, and there has to be the vote for both the speaker and the speaker pro tem. So those are required that we have to be there. All of this will be live streamed when we go, and we probably won't not go back into the chamber until probably sometime in February. But during that time, that's when the committees will be doing their work that we have, and again, that will be all virtual, in which the public can make can give their voice regarding the various bills that are being heard.
Madam Speaker, what does that mean for the veto override process, which I believe is supposed to be one of the first orders of business?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's still going to take place. We have the votes for it, so that will take place. But in terms of whether that be the first day or not, we're still trying to work out in terms of what our plans are. So, but it will be done. We do have the votes for it, for Kerwin, et cetera.
So you're expecting to override Kerwin. I read that on the HBCU funding bill, which I think was your bill last year, mm-hmm. you had a different plan instead of directly overriding the veto.
Yeah, it's a House Bill 1 this year, in which that bill, because people were forgetting that part of the what the state was at fault is a duplication effort. So the bill is going to be resubmitted, and one of the first bills, and hopefully that we get we'll get that through again. So,
what are the other top issues for the Democratic leadership team in the session?
Well, as a result of what we've been going through since March, when we shut down bills on COVID recovery, some of these bills are a result of what we heard from our constituents in terms of, we're going to put structural changes to unemployment because we heard that constantly, that delays in that. And we're also looking to give some support to small businesses and look at some structural reforms before the Maryland Department of Labor. And we are looking to, we don't want small businesses that have not laid off employees to be penalized. We're going to try to give them support. We're going to do some targeted relief as it relates to help with utility payments and support for some of our restaurants, ones that have been the hardest hit, and those that may not come out on the other side of COVID without our help. We're going to also do like housing assistance, increase eviction filing fees. That's a bill that Chairman Clippinger will have, and give income tested right to counsel for landlords. We're going to do broadband reform, work on bills as relates to virtual learning. Also have legislation to incentivize telework. And we also are looking at ways to provide essential employees financial relief and ways to improve their working condition. And that would be both state and private workers.
Where do you stand on having the financial resources to do all that, the state budget? I know there's been some assistance out of Washington,
Yes.
new Congress, new Senate, so there may be more. And I know we have some people who want to see the state spend the rainy day fund. And obviously it's a pretty rainy day at the moment.
Yeah.
Would that be prudent? What do you think?
Well, I have more hope with the change in leadership in the president and the fact that we have more leverage in our congressional delegation in terms of getting something done. So I'm looking in terms of that because we already made our pleas. And I think that that we have a better chance of getting support on our areas that are going to the states as opposed to the prior administration.
Lastly, I wanted to ask you about the state song, which most people know is simply pro-Confederacy and yet has survived attempts virtually every year to remove it as the official state song. That's something you've taken an interest in for this year?
Yeah, I'm in support of repealing the state song. Okay, so I've been on record on that one. So, because it's been going on too long. So, and this is, I think if we're going to do it, this is the time to do it. So.
Our thanks to Speaker Jones. Now for the Republican view, we spoke with GOP leaders in the Senate and House.
First and top priority for everyone is public safety, public health safety, and then public safety crime issues. So we'll be very focused on the COVID virus, continuing to work with the governor, getting the vaccine out, making sure that those who've been harmed through no fault of their own, whether it's a health issue or an employment issue, unemployment, small businesses, restaurants, especially those restaurant employees and the restaurant owners, small business owners, that's really going to be our focus. I mean, this is a COVID pandemic for the history books, and many people are suffering through no fault of their own. That's government's job, to come in and make sure that we're helping take care of those people.
I think the top line macro issues are going to be fiscal responsibility, very much aligning with the governor, in that we hope that the vaccine will allow us to get back to regular life, allow businesses to reopen, allow kids to get back in school, which quite frankly, they already should be. But barring that, that's why we can't spend down our rainy day fund, and we have to be more fiscally conservative just because of the great unknown with this pandemic and everything that's going on. And then one of the other things I'd like to say is that we should at least operate with a do no harm mentality. not raise taxes this year, not put more mandates or regulations on business owners, because a lot of people are very much struggling. And a lot of the businesses that are in business now that when we start session may not be when we leave. The restaurants, hospitality industry is just absolutely being devastated right now.
How do the members of your caucus feel about the COVID plan, the enclosures in the Senate chamber and virtual hearings?
I think there's a mix, but everyone's committed to coming down to session, trying to work through and having productive session, and that the only way that we will be able to do a 90-day session is if we take precautions, that we're going to have to wear the mask, we're going to have to be in the enclosures.
We're a little concerned about the lack of in-person, but again, public health issues have to rule the day. So the speaker has done a really good job of trying to keep us all safe. I mean, 141 of us in this room, absolutely not tenable with today's health concerns. So, we will meet. We're all going to be very careful. None of us really like the Zoom, the virtual hearings. It's very difficult as a legislator to be able to ask the questions you need to ask. And it's difficult for the public to really make sure that their voice is heard.
Delegate Shalega and Senator Hoff. Now, we spoke earlier this week with Senate President Bill Ferguson.
I mean, first and foremost, our driving principle was how do we make sure that members, the staff, and the public who are on campus can participate with the least amount of risk possible. And so we spoke to experts across the board, operational experts, public health experts. And so the rules that we have implemented allow for, in some ways, an even more transparent session in that all of our operations will be live streamed, but direct personal interaction will be severely limited. And so we'll have to see how it goes. We've built in ways to be flexible. A lot of our work will be done virtually, especially in the committees. We'll be on the floor in the Senate for the foreseeable future. But of course, we will be monitoring regularly to see if we have to kind of move things to a more virtual setting. The fundamental bedrock component of our plan is twice a week required testing for members and staff who will be on campus. And we've been really strategic in thinking about how that testing will work. With rapid testing, we worked well with the Department of Health and have a testing site on campus. And so that testing is the bedrock to ensuring that when we are together, that we have as much information as possible to reduce our risk.
What does state law, the state constitution, allow you to do virtually, and what maybe has to be in person?
So it's a really great question. It's one that we've been sort of analyzing, unfortunately, for 6 months. Our state constitution and state laws never fully contemplated the act of a legislature convening in the midst of a pandemic. And so a lot of the guidance and legal framework that's in place is very, very gray. And the challenge we have, of course, is that if we misstep, if we do something that doesn't comply with the constitutional requirements, all of our work product would be null and void. A court could invalidate every law that's passed. So we've had to really err on the side of caution. What we know is that the Constitution makes it clear that our work is done in Annapolis unless there is a decision made by the governor for us to meet elsewhere, or there is an obvious public emergency. This would likely qualify, but it still contemplates us coming together. And so with that concept of our work being in Annapolis, we thought, how do we lower the risk in the place where the seat of government exists? And so that's the fundamental starting point of this whole process. The other issue is about the passage of bills on third reading. I think the final passage of a bill. We know that has to be through a recorded vote. Our advice from the Attorney General makes it clear that that has to be conducted in a way that the vote is recorded in a verifiable way. And that's where the virtual session kind of ran into some problems, because we all know that unfortunately technology is wonderful, but there are some security concerns. And if we took the wrong step, it would invalidate our process. And so we know that we can do committees virtually. It's the work on the floor that is a little bit more uncertain in our current legal framework. And so that's what we've had to accommodate with pieces of virtual if necessary, but also protections on the floor so we can meet in person.
So you're going to have 47 senators, a handful of staffers in the confined space of the state Senate chamber. You have a lot of plexiglass in there, but there isn't enough plexiglass on the planet to make it 100% safe. So my question is, do you have buy-in from all 47 senators on wearing a mask and taking personal precautions in the building, and B, showing up in that somewhat risky arrangement?
I think the Senate really reflects the state of Maryland. We've seen varying perspectives on the virus from day one. Folks who have less personal concerns and are more willing to take on risk, and then others who have underlying health conditions or other comorbidities that expose them to a greater level of sensitivity to the virus. So what Marylanders are feeling is no different than what we have in the Senate amongst members. I have been really trying to make sure that we are in constant communication. A lot of times my answer has unfortunately been, I don't know, but we'll look into it and see what we can figure out. I would say what there is without any doubt full buy-in is the importance of the continuity of government and the importance of the legislative branch to do our work in the midst of this. And so there is a 100% commitment to finding a way to make it happen. I think there is a level of confidence in the precautions that we've put in place. I've been very clear that it's not a total bubble. We are not eliminating all risk. This will take everyday vigilance and personal responsibility. To a person, I think every senator is committed to a lot of the rules of social distancing, the mask mandate in public as well as on the floor throughout. We've had no pushback whatsoever on this front. And so, I really believe that the commitment that members have to getting the job done is really outweighing a lot of their concerns. And I know I own the responsibility of trying to make sure that our systems are as safe as possible in this really uncertain time.
More broadly on COVID-19, your perspective, how would you rate Maryland's response, both in terms of limiting the spread of the disease, getting the vaccines out, how the schools are doing at the county level, and is there a need for the legislature to take any specific pandemic action?
So certainly I would say Maryland has been a leader on many fronts, particularly as on the early end, as we kind of lowered the spread of the disease when there was so little information out there. We saw Marylanders making the personal choices to try and keep themselves safe and their neighbors safe. We've seen the adoption of the use of masks and social distancing at way higher rates than many other states across the country. And so on those fronts, I think we've done an excellent job trying to mitigate the risks. Certainly, we're having a few stumbles when it comes to the distribution of vaccines. This was always going to be an incredibly difficult logistical puzzle. I don't think it's appropriate necessarily to sort of second guess or take pot shots. What I think is most important, there is nothing more important than getting vaccines out to as many people as possible, as quickly and safely as possible. And so, we are going to be monitoring in an ongoing way the distribution of vaccines. The sooner we get Marylanders vaccinated, the sooner that we can start having a conversation realistically about what it looks like to rebuild. But what we know is this virus has been extraordinary in every sense of the word, and the pain that it has caused has been tremendous. I, as a parent of a first and third grader, look at the impact on education just in my own kids. And we've been able to have the privilege to be able to help provide them some support. What we do know is that about 100,000 kids in Maryland of the 900,000 that are enrolled in public schools have not regularly been participating in virtual learning. 100,000 kids. That's since March of 2020. We as a society don't even know what that reality is. And so as we start to think about the back end of this crisis, the intentional efforts to really make sure that those young people and families and individuals in Maryland who are most vulnerable have the supports that they need to put things back together, that is our number one job over the next 9 months. We have got to provide the supports to help kids get back on track, to help small businesses be able to weather through this crisis until we can fully reopen, and to really ensure that individuals who are struggling have those social safety nets to be able to thrive on the back end of this.
In just a minute, if you can, the top 2-3 issues this year from your party's perspective, your leadership perspective in the Senate?
Without a doubt, the most important thing that we will do is deal with this emergency. Dealing with COVID and the myriad of impacts from our healthcare system to our economy, to our education system, to the protection of workers, ensuring that our unemployment system can be improved so that unemployed Marylanders can get the resources that they've earned. This is our number one job. The good news is there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We have to make sure that as the General Assembly leaves this year, that we have clearly and provided identifiable ways to support Marylanders in this great time of need. We also are going to be taking up police reform. This is another fundamental bedrock issue as part of our social contract. And what we know to be the case, what we saw this summer, is that too many communities in Maryland do not feel that the justice system works in an equal and equitable way. And so this year we have the very difficult task, and it will be very hard to make sure that we restore accountability, trust, and transparency between law enforcement and the communities that they serve. We, of course, also will have to balance the budget. This has been a tough year. We are hoping for additional federal support. We've received slightly more, but as we focus on the prior two issues, figuring out how our budget can provide equitable supports and that it is balanced and sets us up for success will be absolutely essential for us in 2021.
Our thanks to Senator Ferguson. Finally tonight, the state's latest COVID-19 numbers. The state this week surpassed 6,000 deaths from the disease, and the number of hospitalized patients topped 1,800 for the first time. Information on testing and vaccine distribution can be found at coronavirus.maryland.gov. And thank you for watching State Circle. Have a good night.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.
Join us for 50 years with Peter, Paul, and Mary.
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning.
It's an anniversary special featuring America's favorite folk group.
The answer, my friend.
Singing the songs that changed history and became the soundtrack of our lives. 50 years with Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Saturday night at 7 on MPT.
You're watching MPT. Be informed. Be entertained. Be inspired.
This week,